I don't know, Mike. I am not sure if I want to record more episodes while I'm here. I think what we have is good enough.
I know, but I'm all about batching. I don't know about you. It makes it easier if we can get a bunch done while you're here, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'll have the energy, to be honest with you. Let's just play it by ear, okay? And I'll think about re-recording that one episode, but I think we should let some others listen to it first.
Okay.
Running a successful business often means dealing with stress, burnout, and exhaustion. That's why prioritizing your mental health at work is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. Hi, I'm Leanna Lee.
I'm Mike Vini, and this is Bettermental. Join us as we share tools, tips, and strategies to help you build better systems for health and business growth.
Ready?
Let's get to work.
Leanna, I'd like to confront you about something. We need to have a talk before we go any further here.
Okay.
In between recording these episodes, we have our meetings, we have to schedule stuff. You always have to come back with anything, that I propose, what your energy will be like at that time. And what's up with you?
I don't know. Let's talk about it.
When I met you, one of the things that stood out to me and still stands out to me is that you prioritize your energy level, meaning you bring that up into conversation about different things. What inspired you to start prioritizing it?
Inspired. Wow. That's an interesting word choice. It's not at all about inspiration. It's necessity, really. So we've talked about our mental health before. I deal with a lovely kind of cocktail of PTSD, anxiety, and depression. And so when it comes to chronic mental health, managing energy is basically how I survive. So it's kind of a matter of life or death, really, not to be super dramatic, but that's kind of how I think of it. Going back all those years ago, I became first a freelancer and then a business owner largely because of mental health. I mean, that was one of the biggest reasons. I started my business after I'd had a really, really bad time with PTSD. I was dating my now husband at that point. I had just had our daughter, and it was a really, really, really rough time for me. But I knew I wanted to move forward in my career. I knew when I wanted to do something for myself, and I wanted to have control over my own schedule. So that's where that started. And I needed to be able to work independently and to take care of my mental health. It was I knew what I needed to do. It was just the taking care of it part. I wasn't that good at it. And that's taken me, all that time, 5.5 years now, to at least get partially on top of. But I'd say the real inspiration, if you want to call it, but I'd say progress is probably a better word for it. I'd say the real progress that's come about with that started happening last year, ironically, during the pandemic, when I started working with your business coach. What? So we have the same business coach, Lacey.
We do?
Oh, come on. And she said something just that's really, really stuck with me. As she knew, I told her right away that mental health was super important to me. I knew because she worked with you that that's something she had come across before with her clients. But she told me something I'll never forget. She said, if mental health is my priority, I need to plan every week like it's my worst mental health day. I have to keep that top of mind, and I have to create systems for that. I have to follow through the systems of that. I have to practice with that. I have to maintain and manage that and just keep that the top priority. And it went from being this, I'm always trying to catch up, always feeling like I'm behind on something, always feeling like I have to choose between mental health and business, to realizing that for me, a successful business looks like me being mentally healthy. And in order for that to happen, my business has to be mentally healthy. My business has to be, based on those principles. And that's kind of where that started. Long answer.
No, I love that. And by the way, I'm just going to say this out loud, just someone to consider for a future guest is Lacey, because we would just learn so much.
That's an excellent idea, actually. That would be awesome. We've talked about her so much.
Yeah, she's gotten a lot of publicity on this show, and we both love her and gotten so much from her. But you said some gold. I just want to go back to here.
Okay.
Because if you're a business owner who's struggling with mental health challenges, visualizing your worst mental health day or week and building systems around that, that's like the most empowering thing I've ever heard in my life.
Isn't it? It's made such a huge difference to me, because I think before, even though I did make these choices to be better about mental health, I don't think I was really taking it that seriously. I think I was like, oh, I have to do this because my mental health is like this. And I can't do this because my mental health is like that. But it's, as you said, empowering is a great word. It's so much more empowering to say, this is who I am. That's cool. To me, success looks like this. And that's how I make it happen. I have systems. I have, goals. I have my business plan is based around that. And that's made a huge, huge difference.
I'm loving this. And just another question that came up for me. I learned so much from you. I really do. And I steal so much and start using it for myself. And hopefully you do too, if you're listening out there. When you're now having one of those days where we like to say you have very little spoons, no spoons, or negative spoons, do you have more of a sense of hope? Do you feel more secure knowing you have these things in place? Like, what happens now?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because, I can talk about this later if you want, what I do on really bad days. But it is, I think you nailed it, really. It gives you a sense of security, because you're sort of planning forward. Again, it's kind of like, what's a good example of this? When you're working out what kind of income you need to make. In the freelance world, we start by averaging out our, taking one of the highest months, like one of our best months. You combine all your expenses, you add them up. You're like, this is what I need to live. What have I made so far recently? And then you take, one of your best months, and that becomes your baseline. That becomes your average. And it works out so well because even if you dip down below that, you still have covered all of your bases. You've got that sense of security. And so that's kind of how I see it, is that it's now this tangible system that I can rely on. And it creates this sort of support network in a way, and technical support. And it really, really helps. And my mental health has become, I'd say, very much more stable because of it too, because I know that's there and I can rely on that.
Okay. I smell a series of episodes around finances and mental health, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, for sure.
So let me ask you, speaking of energy, how are you feeling right now? How's your energy?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. I would say I'm probably on the low end at the moment, which isn't a bad thing. Energy it's like stress. We've talked about how you can have bad stress and good stress, and it's just kind of neutral. So I feel good. I feel relaxed, a little bit tired. I stayed up late reading last night, late for me anyway, but I've had a good week. It's been great seeing you and Danelle. Like, it's great hanging out with, in upstate New York here. So I feel good, but yeah, it's a little tiring, recording like this and preparing for episodes. So, but it's good to know that. I think it's good to get a feel for where you are and just be like, cool, that's where I am. That's okay. I can have low energy and still be productive. Like, I'm recording this now, and after this, I'm going to eat, and that'll probably bump my energy up a little bit. And then I'm going to chillax for a while, and that'll also help. And I know, again, there's that sense of security, because I'm like, this is where I am, and it's cool because I've got I know how to manage it, and I'm happy to be where I am. So, long answer to that, but yeah.
Okay.
How about you?
Well, it's interesting. This morning I woke up and I meditated for 20 minutes, which I do every morning. And I do that because it sets me up for the day. It relaxes me. It grounds me. It's spiritual for me. And after I'm done, usually I do have more energy, because it's like, a nice sleep or something like that. So I definitely had more energy. And at the same time, after I was done, I had to go for a drive to come meet you to record. Mm-hmm. And I went to Starbucks and I got my Trenta That's the big one. There's Venti and there's Trenta.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, that's like Venti on steroids. And basically I got my iced coffee, and of course I got the caffeine rush from that. So the reason I bring that up is because I felt two different energies this morning. In one sense, I felt the caffeine energy, which means I'm probably going to crash at some point. So I got to keep that in mind. But I also felt this very nice, serene energy because I had a very good sleep and woke up, meditated. So there were two different ones. But right now I'm, feeling just okay, a little bit on the higher end of things, but not over the top. And I'm just being okay with where I am too.
Nice.
So that's a theme today. I love that. Now, let me ask you this. When it comes to business owners, freelancers, why is it important that they manage their energy?
Well, the way, this is the way I see it, right? Because this is how I've had to realize it. You don't really have a successful business if you are not a healthy business owner, because I am a business of one. You all may be businesses of 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 20 or whatever, but you're still an integral part of your company, unless you're like Tim Ferriss or something, where you've got everything on autopilot. But even then, you're still you are a strategic part of your own company. So you probably don't work completely on autopilot. And that means that running a business takes energy, thinking about a business takes energy, working in it takes energy. And if you don't have the ability to deal with that, if you get up each day and you're exhausted, or you're not even sure what you have to give each day, or when you're best, what time of day it's best for you to start working or finish working. If you don't know these things about yourself, then it can really kind of mess with what you're able to produce and achieve and contribute. So, and then that's especially true if you're struggling with mental health, whether you're alone or with a team. Being aware of and working with that energy is just a fantastic way to manage those daily ups and downs, because we all have them. We all have like coffee, and then you get like that nervous high, and that may make you more productive. It may make you less productive. We all have our own routines that keep us calm or get us excited. And, there's these things throughout the day. There's these natural ebbs and flows throughout the day, and being able to see those and anticipate those and manage those, I think, makes a huge difference. And of course, doubly so if you have like a chronic mental health condition like Mike and I do. I think it really is what we plan our days around and what we plan our businesses around.
I love this. And we've done some episodes previously on stress, exhaustion, and burnout. Mm-hmm. How does this whole energy thing relate to that, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, kind of what I said before. It's all tied up together. So going back to the concept of stress, right? So we talked about, you introduced stress as a reaction to stimuli throughout the day. And it's a neutral thing. It could be positive or negative. But unchecked, if your body and mind are just bombarded with all these stimuli without some sort of method or system for managing it, it can eventually lead to exhaustion and burnout, and mental health issues. So energy is what we use to deal with these stimuli. It's kind of what we burn up throughout the day. It's our fuel to deal with these stressors. So our level of energy and kind of the type of energy we have as well, because there are lots of different types of energy, that gives us direction. It kind of tells us how we handle what we can handle and how we can handle what comes our way. So the thing is though, and I think this is kind of a common misnomer when we talk about energy management. It's not strength training. It's not like you're becoming a bodybuilder and like, I need more energy, this is how I create more. It's not like that. It's about getting to know yourself, where you're at in life, what your limitations are, what your strengths are, what you can handle, what you can't, what works for you, what doesn't, and just using what you have well, I think. So, and that is kind of how I see that sort of dovetailing in, because you need it to manage stuff, but you also just need to know what it is you have to work with, because that's your foundation for everything. And then that'll kind of dictate not only what you can accomplish, but how you can accomplish in business and in your work life.
everything you just said just reminded me of like a lot of the leadership content out there. Like being a good leader is all about being self-aware. But I'm going to ask you a challenging question. I'm asking this to be difficult, but because some people might be thinking this way, why can't I just focus on drinking Red Bull or espressos? That's, I don't know. That's good for energy, right? If I just drink a lot of coffee.
I feel like you kind of answered your own question earlier, but yeah, sure. That'll work for a little while. I mean, as you said before, you definitely felt this bump, this rush from the caffeine. But the thing is that's sort of artificially inflated energy, and it'll bring you down eventually. You just said, I know I'm going to crash later. So you know that, and you're someone who's extremely self-aware about what's happening with their body, what's happening in their mind. You've been dealing with this in some ways for a lot longer than I have. So you know what caffeine can do to your productivity and to your energy. So caffeine releases adrenaline, of course, which is designed to kind of get you up and moving, right? When you're tired, it kind of gets you going. But it's kind of a nervous energy. It's not necessarily, I feel like caffeine is great for physical stuff. I don't know if you should, I'm kind of talking out of my ass here because I don't actually know if caffeine is something that you should do before like a workout I assume not.
A lot of the pre-workout drinks have caffeine.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh man. To me, that sounds like a heart attack in the making, but so that's a great example there. So, maybe that's something that you do before a workout. Say something.
Yeah. I feel compelled to bring this up because it goes right with this. And what I'm about to say, I'm taking a risk here with what I'm about to say, because in no way am I bad mouthing these people, but I'm just going to give two examples that are out there on the internet. One is a man by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk, and the other is Russell Brunson. And if you look at their videos, they are super high energy, super intense. And again, we're only getting a snapshot of their day there, maybe, 30 seconds to 5 minutes. And oftentimes people see that and think that's how you need to be as an entrepreneur. So there's this perception.
Always on, always.
Yeah, always on, always high energy. And there's even that hustle hashtag.
Oh, yeah.
That people put on Instagram and other social media that, you got to be on the move. Go, 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 go. And I just want to say that's not realistic. It's not realistic. And that's not everyone, that's not all of us. And so it's important to know that doesn't equal productive. It doesn't equal success. That is just, some personalities like to be perceived that way or are that way.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm saying is caffeine.
At least for me, it makes it harder for me to accomplish complex tasks. So I'm caffeine sensitive, and I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say I'm guessing Gary and who's the other one?
Russell Brunson.
Russell probably don't deal with chronic mental health conditions. I'm not sure. I don't know them very well. But then again, high energy can be an indication of a lot of things. So who knows? But I have natural nervous energy, partly, and that manifests sometimes as anxiety and sometimes as PTSD. So I already have kind of a low-key fight or flight response going in my body at all times. So I'm very caffeine sensitive, which means even a small amount of caffeine, I have to be very careful when and how I take it, because that can immediately exacerbate the anxiety and trigger my PTSD. So I sometimes will definitely use caffeine. I always have tea in the morning, black tea, but I keep it to like 1 or 2 cups a day. But you had
that coffee that I made.
Yes. And I was very jittery afterwards. And I'm only doing cafe au laits with what you make from now on. I've learned my lesson. I forgot how strong you make it. So I will sometimes, if I've had a bad night, I'll sometimes have an extra cup of tea or something to keep me going. But it can really, really, like, the crash for me is like extra bad when it happens. So I just have to be careful. I think of it as kind of like comparing sleeping pills with natural sleep after like a day of hiking or just physical exercise. It can help, and it is necessary at times, if your doctor prescribes sleeping medication for if you're, dealing with certain things or you're just having trouble in the moment, but it really can't replace natural sleep. And if you keep taking sleep medication over time, it'll actually cause you to deteriorate, and it'll make it harder for you to sleep well. So it actually makes the problem worse. So that's how I think of caffeine. Again, kind of long spiel, but things like that are important, because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, we still, again, you talked about hustle culture. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like, caffeine will keep me going, work 12, 14, 16-hour days. It's fine. I'm like, yeah, I'm just waiting for you to burn, man. I'm just waiting for you to crash and burn, because that's going to be rough.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even when I go to a co-working space, one of the first things that I just notice in the kitchen area of many of them is the coffee situation. Mm-hmm. They have so many mugs available and coffee always brewing so people can have it. So, well, now that you've shared all that, what specific strategies do you use for energy management?
As alternatives to caffeine.
Yes, let's hear legal alternatives.
So I think I've mentioned a couple of these before, but this is a good time to go into them in depth. But the first one that really helps me is called a gut check. So again, going back to anxiety and PTSD thing, and depression, really, the thing with chronic mental health conditions, especially, so I have like uppers, so that's anxiety and PTSD, and downers, which is depression. So they sort of tell my brain tells my body weird things all the time. And at best, it's usually sort of overreacting to whatever is going on. If it's depression, it's like a really negative reaction. It's usually a really negative reaction, but it either kind of brings me up and gives me nervous energy where I'm unable to focus, or I'm just like flatline a little bit, or it's just flat out lying to me and telling me things that aren't really there, and trying to create scenarios that don't even exist, and all sorts of things. But the one thing that never lies to me is my gut. Yeah, it tells you when you're hungry, tells you all sorts of things when you're not feeling well. It also tells me what triggers are real and sometimes where they're coming from. And this may not seem like it relates to work, but bear with me, because I promise it does. So it helps me manage energy kind of day to day. So what I'll do is, it could be when I wake up, it could be partway throughout the day, any time of day, really. I usually get a feeling that something is off. So that may mean that I'm just like anxious for no reason. It may mean, or not no reason, but it may mean I'm anxious out of seemingly nowhere, or I'm suddenly like really tired or really sad or really frustrated, or I can't focus on a task. I'm just like, I'm checking email every 15 minutes. Or one thing I do when I'm really anxious is look at finances, which is such a terrible idea when you're anxious. I feel like it just makes things worse. But if I'm doing like the same things over and over again, or if I'm kind of scrolling through my phone a lot, or just these habits that I realize that I've picked up when things are not great, that's when I kind of know that I need to sort of check in with myself and see what's happening. Now, on a regular day, my anxiety is pretty constantly there. So it's usually like, it feels like a small little weight in my stomach. I'll often feel like a little slight nausea. That's maybe if things are a little bit worse, but I know I always have an awareness that something is going on down there. And that's kind of what I see as my anxiety. So that works as my baseline. So I'll find a comfortable place to sit and kind of just get to know what's happening. I'll just kind of breathe for a few minutes. And I don't really meditate. I don't have a strategy for this. I just kind of sit and like figure out, okay, that's where that is. That's where it's going. This is how it feels. And then once I've kind of gotten a sense of what I'm feeling, that's when I start asking myself questions. I ask my gut questions, basically. And I usually start really broad. So I'll say something like, what I'm trying to do is find the source. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling this extra, whatever it is? So I usually start pretty broad. I usually say something like, is it money? Is it work? Is it family? Is it my marriage or relationship? Is it friends? Is it maybe it could be an upcoming event or project?
Is it Mike Vini?
And if one of those answers are right, I'll usually feel either like a small tightening, like a fist someone making a fist in my gut, or there'll be like a flare of pain. Like there'll be like a little stab of pain. I'll be like, all right, okay. So I've got that. And then that'll be stage 2. I'll ask more specific questions. It's usually keywords. So say the answer was work. If the answer is work, then I can say things like is it client call with blank? Is it this specific project? Is it my schedule for the day? Is it like, I'll try multiple things, and usually I'll get an answer. I'll get another like flare of pain. I'll get another like squeezing feeling. And that's when I can tell, okay, so I'm anxious about this. That's why my body is acting this way. My brain is acting this way. And this is not a solution. It's just awareness. It's just telling me why, the source of what's going on. It doesn't give me an answer to it. Sometimes just knowing what it is will actually kind of help dissipate the anxiety, because it's that awareness. And I've acknowledged that it's okay to feel this way about this thing, because it's, in some cases, it's something I can't help. Like, I just have a client call. There's nothing I can do about it. I can be prepared for it, but I get anxious before every single client call. It happens every time. Probably with your presentations, you get this kind of little rush of
Absolutely.
Something. So it's kind of just that feeling of sort of being on stage. Nothing I can do about it, but I can recognize that I'm using some of these coping mechanisms to deal with the anxiety and stop that. Like, get myself a cup of tea or something instead. And other times it's a warning sign. So it could be a sign that I am onto something bigger. So it could be, for an example, if it's work, it could be a sign that my relationship with a certain client isn't going very well, or maybe I wasn't as prepared for a project as I should be, and I'm now nearing the deadline and I need to start making changes. It could be a bunch of things, but essentially what gut checks do is just help me learn to listen to what's going on in my body. And then that'll tell me where those stressors are, so I can then manage my energy, if that makes sense. So that's just one.
Okay, you can keep going. Tell me what else you got.
So this next one is kind of applying these gut checks, because these can relate to anything. They're not really work related. They're just about energy in general. So I just used work as an example. But I also apply a similar principle to how I schedule my workday, which I call intuitive scheduling, which I kind of worked out with our business coach, Lacey. So with intuitive scheduling, this is something I worked out with our business coach, Lacey. She helped me kind of figure out how best to schedule my workday in a way that would help me prioritize mental health. So some days, again, I start with this feeling that something's kind of off. I'm trying to make this a system that I use just every day of the week. But for now, so I do like a bit of structure. So for now, this is more like when things aren't going so great and I know that something else is happening. So instead of working to a specific schedule, like I usually set for myself, I'll sit myself down and ask my gut a different question. Instead of, is it blank, blank, blank? I'll ask, are you ready to work? That's my question. And if I feel that flare up or that tightening in my gut, or just like a wave of anxiety, the answer is no, I am not ready for work yet. So I'll tell myself that that's okay. It's perfectly fine. And I will go do something else, usually something soothing. So I'll make tea. Maybe I'll watch an episode of a favorite show. Maybe I'll go for a walk or listen to music or my favorite audiobook. I'll give it like 30 to 45 minutes, and then maybe I'll ask again. And I'll keep asking until one of two things happens. One, I don't feel that flare anymore. Or two, my brain will just start thinking about work. Maybe like, it'll start like solving problems. And I'll be like, okay, I guess I'm ready for this now. Like it just it needed extra time and sort of permission to turn on its own, to switch into work mode. And once I find myself like planning things in my work things in my head, I'm like, I guess I'm going to work now. And I just take my tea upstairs and I go to work. And sometimes, it doesn't work all the time, because there are days where I just have to get things done by a certain time. So I have, whether it's a big deadline or a project or something. So I have an emergency protocol for that too. However, it's still kind of a version of intuitive scheduling, but essentially I work in short bursts. So like 30 to 45 minutes, sometimes 20 to 30 if it's a really bad day. And I won't necessarily time myself, but I'll kind of try and stick to that general time frame. And I'll try and get a chunk done. I'll say, okay, I'll finish the section and then I'll take a break. Finish this section and then take a break. So I'll break down the project into really manageable chunks. And then I take a break in between each work period. And it's still sort of intuitive scheduling, but it's just a little bit more intentional and focused, because the goal is not to put off work. It's just to kind of work at my own pace and to let my body and brain kind of tell me what is happening. That sounds kind of woo, but honestly, with chronic mental health, like there's really no other way to do it, because you are at the mercy of what's going on here
inside of you.
So that is what happens. I think the last thing I can think of is just on the subject of scheduling, just finding, it took me a long time, but I found the best times for me to work each day. So we all live by, circadian rhythms. We all live on this 24-hour cycle, seasons, light and dark, day and night, all that fun stuff. We build our days around them, right? But everyone has kind of their own version of that. We all have different, we have night owls, we have morning larks, we have people who prefer to be, get stuff done in the afternoon. Those are called chronotypes. So that kind of tells us where we prefer to be awake and asleep and when our energy is high and low. So I'm a morning person. I tend to be kind of immediately awake when I wake up and ready to go. So that means that my energy is usually pretty high in the mornings. And then I tend to get my energy sort of dips in late morning to early afternoon. And then I get a energy dip or energy kind of bump in the early evening. So that kind of follows a chronotype called the bear chronotype. I encourage you to look them up, see kind of what you fall into. But what does that mean for work for me? That means that I schedule my workday around those energy bumps, because that's when I'm going to be more productive. And I stay away from work, at least heavy work, during those down periods. So I'll eat during those down periods. I'll relax during those down periods. I probably won't take calls during those down periods, as Mike knows to his detriment, because when we schedule calls, sometimes he's like, oh, can you do this time? And I'll be like, no, Mike, that's my low energy period. You will get no sense out of me. Like, sorry. Let's find a time that works. So I just have to be mindful of the fact that there are certain times throughout the day that I work best and not so great. And I just kind of try and schedule around that. And that helps conserve the energy I have and helps me kind of replenish my energy throughout the day. So that's a lot. And I'm sorry. And there's a really, really long answer to your question. But that's some of my favorite techniques. But what I'm actually curious about is your techniques, because I do all this working in one place from home. So I have all these techniques that I can kind of do when I'm just in one place. I'm kind of static, but you are constantly on the move. So do you have, do you do similar things? I know you do meditation and all sorts of stuff, but what works for you when you're constantly moving? Because that in itself can really be quite a stressor. So what about
it? Can be. I have a rule for when I travel that I should come back home less stressed than when I left. I need to figure out how to do that. And that's a vision that I strive for. Wow, that doesn't always work.
That's an amazing goal.
Well, it is, but it forces me to keep that in mind throughout the trip. The challenge with me is different time zones and presentations at different times. And I am being paid a good amount of money to be on at the time that I'm scheduled to present. And so I'm kind of at the mercy of that. I can't just say, well, no, I don't feel like giving you a good presentation right now. I will not be working if that happened. So what I've learned to do is to know what it is that I need to do each day to be ready, and trust that even if it's not at the time that's most ideal, I can figure out what I need to muster up to be that performer, that presenter. And so, for instance, when I travel, one of the first things I do when I get to a hotel room is figure out the chair that's going to be the meditation chair. So it feels like home. It gives me something that's regular. I know that
sort of an anchor.
An anchor, yeah. And I meditate twice a day for 20 minutes. That's the thing I keep going. I also, one of the first things I do when I travel is find a gym and sometimes get a gym membership in the location that I'm at for a few days. So I go to work out at the gym. That helps so much with jet lag. so much with jet lag. So it gives me something to look forward to, gets me out of the hotel. And this way, when I'm presenting, I have more energy. And also, one of the most important things for me is hydration. When I travel, I buy so much smart water. That's my favorite water because it's smart. Shout out. No, they're not.
This is not a sponsor.
Yeah, they're not sponsoring us here. But I have to buy that. So when I go on long haul flights, I'll have like 4 giant bottles of smart water that I say to myself, I have to finish by the end of the flight. And so I'm constantly going to the bathroom on the flight to keep myself moving. I stay in an aisle seat to keep myself getting up. If someone has to get up, great. That'll get me moving, keep my body moving. So oftentimes I'll be halfway around the world, getting off the plane, feeling super relaxed. Everyone else is just pooped. So that's why it's important to be intentional. So those are some of the things that I do. But I wanted to ask you just really quickly here. I know we're almost out of time, but how does a business owner get started with this stuff?
Well, so you've heard a lot of different techniques in the past, 20, 30 minutes now. I lost track of how long you've been talking from both me and Mike. And keep in mind, we've been doing this for quite a long time. It's taken years for us to work on these and develop these strategies. So my strategies, I've through trial and error figured out that these are the best ways to work for me. They may not as work as well for you. So you're welcome to give them a try. I'd love to hear how they work for you. But what you really need to do is like start at the beginning. Start by figuring out what it is that works for you. And one good way to do that, we talked about it in our January episode, is with a stress-free reset.
Stress-free reset.
God. Yeah. With a stress-free reset for your business, because we went through some steps that'll help you start to evaluate yourself, your mental health, and your business, and figure out kind of what you need, what's working for you, what isn't. And then that'll kind of get you on the path to that and help you start creating your own systems and your own methods for managing your energy and mental health.
Okay, what if none of this works?
Oh yeah, that's the question, isn't it? And it doesn't always work. The techniques, the gut checks and the intuitive scheduling and all of that, they're great. Like I said, sometimes they give me warning signals they let me know that something is happening that I really need to work on. And if I'm having a really bad day, when I have a really bad day, if I'm in the middle of a depressive cycle or my anxiety is just through the roof, I'm not going to be productive. I'm not going to get things done. And I usually have a really small window of time before I have to just be done for the day. So when that happens, obviously I have to figure out a way to wrap things up at work, but we'll set that aside for the moment. What I actually end up doing is just kind of sitting with whatever that is, whether it's depression or anxiety, because sometimes letting myself be not okay for a while, at least, is the best thing I can do. Because what I found is if I really tamp it down and I just work through it with the intuitive scheduling that I talked about before, sometimes I can get through a day when I'm having a depressive episode and still be productive because I'm doing work in short bursts and I'm conserving that energy very, very carefully. But there's some days where it's just not happening. And those are the email your client, I have to take a mental health day. I will get this to you by this time. I will do this, this, and that. Like those are the days when I'm pulling at all the stops to take care of myself. But yeah, there are days when mental health just shows up and you just have to let it. And it'll look different for everyone. But I've dealt with depression for over 15 years. And those bad days can get really, really bad. They can be, I can be comatose. I could be suicidal. All sorts of stuff can happen. But I've learned that the best way to get through like that, it usually starts getting bad. And then I hit I don't think crisis point is necessarily the right term for it. Mike, you may have a better handle on this, though we have different types of depression. But for me, it's like falling down a pit. I hit the bottom. And then once I've hit that bottom, it's uphill from, not uphill, but my mood starts swinging up from there. That's how I work, at least. I can't speak for you. But basically, I need to let myself get to that point. I need to be comatose for a little while. I need to let the suicidal thoughts, if they come up, kind of flow through for a little while and say, you know what? It's okay. It's okay if I'm feeling this way. It's okay that this is happening. I'm going to get through this. It's fine. And it usually is. And so by sitting with that, by just letting myself feel that way, sort of usually tucking myself up into a blanket, maybe I'm rocking a little or I'm crying in the shower, whatever it has to be, I just kind of let it happen. Yeah. And then it just, at least for me, it eventually kind of dissipates. So usually for me, there's a lot of brain fog. There's that cotton wool feeling that kind of dampens your feelings and your thoughts, and you kind of have no concentration. That's usually a good sign that I'm done for the day. So I have to kind of just let myself sit there and feel nothing or everything, whatever the case may be. It could be a few hours. It could mean that I'm out for a few days, but however long it is, I know I'm going to come out the other side. Sometimes it's been a near miss, but usually I come right out of it just fine. And that is, to me, that is what's worked the best, because my version of mental health, the chronic conditions that I'm dealing with, I don't take medication for, aside from CBD and the occasional cannabis. So I'm not on antidepressants. I'm not on antipsychotics of any kind. The way that my therapist and I worked it out is that sitting with this is often the best way to do it, unless I am actively suicidal. If I'm attempting suicide in any way, then sort of it's all bets are off.
And I just want to say this right now. If you are feeling suicidal thoughts or thinking of harming yourself or someone else, I encourage you to talk to a mental health professional or call 911 immediately.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that I'm used to this because I've dealt with this for years and I know where my tipping point is. If you're just starting to go through with this, or you're in crisis and just sitting through this is going to make things worse for you, and it's not going to help. Going to a professional is the best thing that you can do for yourself, whether that means taking yourself to a hospital for a day or two, or immediately calling your therapist, or getting a therapist, or calling a hotline if you don't have a therapist and just need to talk to someone. Make sure it's a mental health professional. This is not the time to talk to family or friends who just they're great, but they don't necessarily know how to handle crisis situations. So, take this with a grain of salt, because it really, really is an individual thing.
Okay. Well, on that note, thank you, Leanna. You really gave us a lot today. I mean, this might have been our longest episode so far. You gave us a lot of your strategies and
little horse.
Oh, great. So we can totally record another episode after this.
Oh, definitely.
But I want to end with this. Michael Hyatt is one of my favorite influencers to follow. And he introduced me to this concept years ago that you really can't manage time. You can only manage energy. And that always sat with me. And then I met you, Leanna, and you really became an example of that, like a living example of that. But I want to end with a quote from him that says, until someone invents a time-stretching machine, that's all we've got. The thing that you can actually manage is your energy. And once you really embrace this, it's a game changer. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. You can learn more about the resources we mentioned or connect with special guests by checking out today's show notes at bettermental.fm.
And if you liked this episode, keep in touch by following us on your favorite podcast app. In the meantime, we'd love to hear what you think about the show. So DM or mention us on Twitter at BettermentalFM.
Thanks again, and see you next time.